In the Power Tools for Health book, I have a section on cancer. There's basic biological information. There are clinical studies, and a lot of those come from Eastern Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I recommend PEMF therapy for cancer on a routine basis.
Okay.
What we find very often is that people with cancer who are doing magnetic field therapy appropriately with the appropriate equipment, and we can talk about appropriate equipment in a second.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. So if you got the appropriate equipment, then you can suppress the cancer production, the growth of the cancer. What you're doing is you're stimulating the immune system. You're creating a different environment for the cancer to be growing in. And when you're doing that, then the body has a better fighting chance. And we've found that when people stop their magnetic field therapy, they've been doing it for their cancer, and they stop it, the cancer grows.
Interesting.
Because you've taken the brakes off. Okay, the magnetic therapy was, in some sense, providing brakes on the cancer process.
Welcome to the PEMF Effect, where breakthrough science helps take control of your health. I'm Dr. William Pawluk, and I'm here to guide you in tapping into the power of PEMF therapy for recovery, vitality, and total body wellness. From overcoming chronic pain, optimizing brain health, boosting energy, and aging with strength, this podcast is your path to cutting-edge solutions for lifelong well-being. If you're ready to move beyond symptom management and tap into your body's natural healing ability, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Today's episode is a previously recorded session from a summit where I was a guest speaker.
Welcome to this episode of Environmental Toxicants, Autoimmunity, and Chronic Disease Summit. My name is Dr. Ed Levitan, your host for today's episode, and I'm really privileged because we got to meet about a year ago, and I'm really excited for this conversation with Dr. William Pawluk. He is a holistic doctor near Baltimore, considered the foremost authority on PEMFs, pulsed electromagnetic fields, therapy in North America. Interested especially in holistic pain management, regenerative health, stem stimulation, anti-aging, sleep, and anxiety. He has authored 2 comprehensive books on healing with magnetic fields called Power Tools for Health and Supercharge Your Health with PEMF Therapy. Dr. Pawluk, it's a pleasure. Looking forward to this conversation. So can we start off by how'd you get into this? How did this start? Because this is not how we were trained in medicine, right?
It is absolutely not how we were trained in medicine, because it didn't exist when I was trained in medicine.
Okay, well, there we go.
Well, no, it didn't exist. It existed a little bit in Eastern Europe, but not in the U.S. for sure. And it's still not taught in the medical schools in the U.S. There's a history behind that. And one of the reasons that it's not embraced by medicine all that much. So I started basically because as a family physician, I was a medical director of a group of family physicians in New Jersey. We had 14 family doctors, the biggest family medicine group in the whole East Coast of the U.S. And we all shared patients. We all rounded on each other's patients on a regular basis. And in a very short period of time, I had 2 patients admitted for gastric bleeding. So you don't get admitted for gastric bleeding, right? Unless it's big, unless it's a significant serious issue, right? So one of them almost died. Didn't fortunately go into sepsis, didn't shut down kidneys, but almost died. And the other one stayed for a couple of days and was discharged. And I had to ask myself, what are we doing? And the common denominator for both of those was ibuprofen, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. They were on non-steroidal anti-inflammatories for pain management.
Right. That makes sense.
Right? So
that's normal. That's normally what we do it. Now we go to opioids.
Well, back then we didn't go to opioids. That was the last resort.
Right.
Back in those days, in the early 80s, last resort.
Yeah.
That changed about 10 years later, became a first resort often, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But in any event, I said, well, this is crazy medicine. This is insanity. It's a different definition of insanity. It's doing the same things over and over again, hoping for no bad results.
Right.
So and we knew that there were complications associated with ibuprofen. And one of the ones that's not known, not talked about a lot, is actually kidney disease. So there are about 40,000 people a year that are dying from GI bleeding and also dying from kidney disease from the use of non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. So that's more people dying from ibuprofen that are dying from HIV.
Yeah. No, I mean, isn't it a fact that if ibuprofen was new to the market right now, they would never get FDA clearance? something of that nature?
Possibly true, because once you start doing the side effect studies, once you're doing the mortality studies and so on, then they shut down very quickly.
Yeah.
So in any event, I said, oh, this is bad medicine. So how can I do pain management without using drugs? Because my consultants didn't have any solutions. The hospitals didn't have any solutions. My peers didn't have any other solutions either. So I studied acupuncture. So I went back to the UCLA school and did the Joseph Helms course in acupuncture for physicians. Got my certification in that. And then I started to try to practice acupuncture. So again, this is 1990.
Yep.
And acupuncture, what's that? What's that? Get away from me with those needles.
It's a little bit better now. It's not, unfortunately, not as...
A lot better now, because Madonna had acupuncture.
Okay, well, if Madonna had acupuncture, all right, fair enough.
That needles all up and down her back. So yeah, now it's acceptable.
Okay.
So basically, I said, I studied acupuncture, but people were rejecting needles. So I said, well, how can I do acupuncture without using needles? So I discovered that other than using pressure or using moxibustion, I discovered that actually in the Orient, they were using magnets on acupuncture points. So I said, well, let me look into this. I started using magnets. And when I started using the magnets, I did discover with EMG and nerve conduction testing that a magnet on an acupuncture point changed, it decreased the flow up to the point, but it increased it beyond the point.
Okay.
All right. So I said, what's going on here? What's this really doing? And of course, I discovered that magnets were doing a lot of other things at the point at which you put the magnet. And the bigger the magnet, the bigger area of action there was. So I said, okay, this is legitimate. This is real. Why? Why is this working? How is this working? I don't have an explanation. I never learned in medical school what magnets would do on acupuncture points. Never mind what they would do in tissue in general. In fact, I went to the bioengineering department at Johns Hopkins, and I met with the chief of bioengineering, and I said, tell me why static magnets work. And he said, there's no science, there's no reason from a scientific perspective that they should work.
Right.
Because it's all about pulse magnetic fields. It's about dynamic magnetic fields. They work. Science knows about that, but they can't explain why a magnet would work. Same principle. It's just that you take the magnet out of the picture, and it's the body that's doing the action. So, okay, I said, well, he's not going to help me at all to try to understand what's going on here. And most of the science at that time was actually in Cyrillic. It was actually in the Russian languages, the Eastern European languages, or German. And there were abstracts you get the abstracts, but you don't get the paper. And they were in obscure journals and so on. So along the way, I met a doctor from the Czech Republic, Dr. Jerebic. And he had got his PhD in magnets for rehab.
Interesting.
And so he had reviewed all that literature, and he became the go-to person, the consultant for the government when people were applying for approvals by the government for magnetic therapies. So magnetic therapy became a big deal in the Czech Republic. But he had translated all that literature, and he had a manuscript, and he says, I'll give it to you. So, whoa.
Cool.
But it was in Czech English. So you had to have some science, and you had to have some Czechish. I redid the manuscript, and I published my first book, Magnetic Therapy in Eastern Europe, a review of 30 years of research. So at that point already in 87, 88, 90, somewhere in there, 91, they already been doing this for 30 years. 30 years.
That's
already,
crazy.
Right?
Well, they're mad Russian scientists, right?
And then exactly. But they weren't that mad. They were smart. It's like crazy like a fox, right?
Not like a mad hatter.
It's good science.
Yeah.
So they had developed enough clinical evidence. They had enough mechanistic evidence for how PEMFs could work. And so I just moved on. I started using pulse magnetic fields instead of magnets. Magnets are very limited because the intensity of the magnet is very important. And a magnet only works in the area that you apply the magnet. But if you got arthritis in 5 joints, what do? You have to put the magnet on each joint. So you're basically walking around, having paper clips attached to you.
Okay, so then what is PEMF? Because that's a well, first of all, let's kind of, is there any association, a lot of people talk about EMFs, and then now you're talking about PEMFs. Is there anything of similarity except the abbreviations? Let's start at the basic level.
Okay. It's a very, 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 very important distinction. I consider EMFs, even though it is electromagnetic fields. That's what EMF stands for. And pulse magnetic fields are pulse PEMFs. So they still got the same last three letters.
Right.
In my perspective, to make it simpler and easier, EMFs, in my perspective, are environmental magnetic fields.
Right.
As opposed to therapeutic magnetic fields.
So I just want to, for our listeners, just to make sure, when people talk about EMFs, they usually talk about electromagnetic fields coming from wireless modems, from if you're hooked up your electrical socket poorly and you're getting some electromagnetic field from that, but there's nothing healing or good about that kind of.
A cell phone is an EMF.
Correct. Yeah.
A cell phone tower transmitting is an EMF. Right. So those are essentially environmental. They're around us, all around us, all the time. And the big one of the distinctions is one's called an open loop and one's called a closed loop.
Okay. So let's talk about that. What's the difference?
So an EMF basically is broadcast into the environment.
Mm-hmm.
It's got wavelengths.
Mm-hmm.
It's shooting out in the environment. Radar, television waves, radio waves, microwaves in the environment are all broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
And so because they have wavelengths, that's important because very short wavelengths, microwaves, have extremely short wavelengths. They absorb.
Mm-hmm.
They're absorbed by the body. And that's the principle behind a microwave oven.
Right.
Right. You cause heating.
Yes. And
hopefully the tissue is already dead when you do the heating. I did have a story of one guy who put a hole in his microwave oven who was trying to heal a rash. Put his hand up, put his arm up against the microwave oven.
Yeah. Okay.
I was on a coast-to-coast interview, and this guy calls in and he asked that. Sorry. So EMFs basically are open loop. They're broadcast out.
Yeah.
A PEMF, pulse magnetic field, is created by current flowing through a wire.
Okay.
You need a wire, and you need a source of the current. So you have an output machine, and you have a wire. Then that wire, the current flowing through the wire, let's say that's my thumb. That's the direction of the current. Mm-hmm. And that creates a magnetic field that's perpendicular to the flow of the current in the wire.
And just to be clear, again, for those people that are technical, we have alternating current coming from our sockets. You're not talking about that.
No, but the alternating current goes into a machine that's then rectified and turned into DC.
Right, direct current.
And then pulsed.
Yep.
As a DC current.
Yep. I'm not sure. That might be just my geeky coming out, but
no,
I just want to be clear.
People do ask us, does this machine produce EMF? Well, no, it filters it.
Yeah.
So it filters it and rectifies it so it creates a DC field out of an AC field.
Mm-hmm.
So we use the power source and then rectify it. So the current flowing in the wire is DC, but it's pulsed. Mm-hmm. And every time it pulses, the magnetic field goes out and comes back. So because it goes out and comes back, that's a closed loop.
Okay.
All right. It doesn't go out into the environment. It goes out to the extent of the strength of the magnetic field. And it goes out only with the pulse.
Right.
For every pulse, it goes out and comes right back. Pulse comes back. So it's not in the environment. It's not radiating in the environment like EMFs are. So PEMFs are designed specifically for therapeutic uses, primarily. EMFs are designed for communication. They're designed for other uses that subintentionally may affect biology. Right. But they're not designed for that purpose. And so as a result, you have to do the environmental toxicity studies and so on about what the effects of those EMFs are on biology. And they do have EMFs, they do have effects on biology, but it's a dose thing. So it's how big is the dose that you're getting? Little itty bits of doses now and then probably don't do a whole lot unless the organism is already compromised. And this is where we get into detoxification. And
our favorite subject.
So we can get into that in a second. So magnetic field therapy, PEMFs, don't do that. They're not creating disturbance in the body. They're creating basically a reaction by the body which then is translated into energy by the body. In other words, the body makes energy. So the magnetic field, as it's passing into the body, every time it pulses, It passes into the body, but comes right back. That pulse interacts with the ions in the body.
Okay.
Virtually every tissue has charge. Every cell, every molecule has some amount of charge to it. Some are neutral, in which case it doesn't matter. But if they have a charge to them, then what happens is the magnetic fields interact with that charge to produce more energy. And that's called Faraday's law. There's Faraday's law of magnetic induction.
Okay.
So Faraday discovered that if you pulse a magnetic field past a loop of copper, right, and you open that loop up or you close that loop, you can actually cause a light bulb to turn on.
Right.
Right. Well, the same thing's happening in the body. The body takes that current, that stimulation from the current, and then turns it into energy. And that energy then is used by the body for whatever it needs it for.
So you're actually, let me just make sure I got it clear. So you're exciting, let's say, electrons and positive, like you're exciting all the different
Ions,
molecules
electrolytes
in the body, and by giving, and then you're giving them energy. And this is how,
the body produces the energy, correct?
all right. So I'm going to go where I'm interested. So I'm not sure so hopefully this will be interesting for our viewers too. But so we think of, from a basic science point of view, we think of energy that the body uses as ATP. And the free radical, when ATP becomes ADP, puts out energy. So is that the same energy as what you're talking about, or is it a different energy? How do you measure it? I'm just like, now I'm like,
the answer is yes.
Okay.
So the answer is
tell me more.
Yes, ATP.
Okay. So does it create more ATP?
Yes. By a factor of 200 to 400% increase in ATP.
Okay.
During the time of the stimulation. But every ATP molecule in the body is recycled between 200 to 500 times per day. So you make the ATP, but ATP by itself is useless. It doesn't do anything.
Sure.
It has to be hydrolyzed. In other words, you have to strip off one of the phosphates to release energy. And that's where ATP becomes the energy molecule of the body.
Right.
In the cell, in the mitochondria, within the cell, and so on. So those are the energy factories of the cell, using oxygen and using other nutrients to make the ATP. But magnetic fields hydrolyze it. In other words, they increase the amount and production of enzymes that strip off that phosphate. And then they stimulate other enzymes that cause another phosphate to be added back to that same root molecule. And so it recycles it many, many, many times.
Much faster. Okay.
Much faster.
So many questions. All right, let's start with, all right, I can see that. Now, how long, so let's say you pulse people, you give them energy for 10 minutes. How long does that last? Because you said 2.5 times it'll build up ATP. How long will effect last?
Okay, that's an important question, because it's not just about the hydrolysis and the production of ATP. It's what happens with the energy that's produced.
Okay, tell me more.
So the energy that's produced is then used by the cell for all its processes.
Mm-hmm.
It's used by the cell to maintain membrane integrity, to maintain the proper charges at the cell membrane. And once you maintain or stabilize the cell membrane charges, the millivoltage of the membrane, then all of a sudden you open up cell channels, membrane channels. And there's about 200 membrane channels in the cell. So all of these cell membrane channels begin to open up, and waste gets out,
mm-hmm.
and energy and food or nutrients get in. So what the cell needs to operate now gets in. So ATP then is the stimulus, the catalyst.
So you're not only detoxing because you're removing waste, you're actually feeding the cell itself.
You're increasing the nutrition to the cell itself. Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
So magnetic fields also stimulate adenosine receptors. So it's not just the ATP, it's the adenosine receptor itself.
Okay. And what does that do?
And the adenosine receptors, and there are subtypes of energy adenosine receptors, and they are responsible for inflammation, managing chronic inflammation.
So does it turn it on or off?
Turns it on. So it amplifies the adenosine receptors by 20 fold or more.
Okay.
So as a
and
result,
that turns Does that turn inflammation though on or off?
Then it begins to turn off temporarily. There's an increase in inflammation with that adenosine stimulation, but in the long run, what you're doing then is you're causing the adenosine to be recycled as well, which then goes and targets the chronic inflammation, because chronic inflammation happens because acute inflammation didn't turn off.
Cool.
Right? You don't get chronic inflammation without going through acute inflammation first.
Right.
Right. So then what the magnetic fields are doing is they're turning off the chronic inflammation through stimulation of these adenosine receptors.
So it's almost like in my mind, I have it pictured like it's almost like a scar, the chronic inflammation. And then you have to work through the scar by increasing it a little bit in terms of increasing the inflammation. Then the body can release the inflammation.
Well, that's an important analogy. I think it's a beautiful analogy. When you have a cut, when you have a wound, a cell injury, the body tries to fix it. And what does the body do? It sends in leukocytes, it sends in nutrients, it sends in circulation, it sends in oxygen. All sorts of processes begin to happen when you have that acute inflammatory process going on. And what has been found is that PEMF therapy increases the adenosine receptor by having the right magnetic field intensity. So you could start off at a very low level and then gradually goes up and plateaus. So at about 15 Gauss, there's a plateau of the amount of adenosine stimulation there is.
Okay.
So you need about 15 Gauss at the adenosine receptor to turn off inflammation through the adenosine process. But then there's also nitric oxide effects. There are just so many different actions and components of PEMF therapy, gene effects, circulation effects. You know, the list is, there's like 25 in the Power Tools for Health book. I list 25 different actions of magnetic fields and provide references for how they happen. So in PEMF therapy then stimulates anti-inflammatory actions.
Cool. That, I mean, yeah, there's still so many questions. All right. So it reduces how, all right. So how do you know what you're saying 15 Gauss, but how do you know, like there's, I'm sure there's a huge range. How do you, and I'm sure there's different magnetic fields, and how do you know what's good? How do you know what's not good?
Fortunately, PEMF therapy is extraordinarily safe.
Okay.
So what's good and what's not good? So number one was the optimal magnetic field intensity at the target tissue, at the white cell, because the white cell that does that work. So so you need 15 optimally, but the magnetic field is like radiation, but it's not ionizing radiation. It's a form of radiation, right? It's not deadly information. It's not killing cells like radiation for chemo for cancers. What happens though is magnetic fields are like, they follow in the inverse square law. So when we do radiation on purpose to kill tissue, ionizing radiation to kill tissue, you have to calculate the dose. And you have to calculate it based on how much energy you want to deliver and how deep you want to deliver that energy.
Right.
And that calculation is based on the inverse square law, Newton's inverse square law. So what you have to do then is you have to know, here's what I need as an optimal magnetic field intensity, and here's what the dose has to be in order to deliver it. So for example, if you're trying to go across the skull, if you're trying to treat inflammation in the brain, and you're going to put a magnetic field up against the head, then you want to say reach the other side of the head. In order to deliver 15 Gauss at the opposite side of the brain, you're going to need to have about 4,000 Gauss.
Wow. And that's not dangerous. There's no danger in that much Gauss.
Well, is there danger in doing an MRI to the brain?
Not currently reported yet.
So basically, that's very safe, and that's using 20,000 or 30,000 Gauss.
Okay.
So it's 1, 2, 3 Tesla, and now we have something called RTMS that the FDA has approved, transcranial magnetic stimulation, and that's for treatment-resistant depression.
Yep.
And you put a coil to the front of the head here, and you're talking about a 10,000 Gauss machine coil that's being put on top of the brain, specifically to treat the brain.
Interesting. I've had people go through TMS, but I never thought I never had the connections here. So you're helping me with the connections. I like it.
Well,
So-
a TMS is just magnetic field energy. That's all it is. It's just a high intensity magnetic field energy and designed in a coil that's going to deliver it in a very focused way in a certain spot in the brain, because that's their target and their goal. But even that energy stimulated there for treatment-resistant depression is not staying there. That magnetic field goes through the whole brain.
Sure. And that
Right.
hopefully does some good for the whole brain, right? Not just
Well, it does, and they don't want to talk about that because they're focused just on where the depression part of it. But yes, when you talk about neurodegenerative disorders, when you talk about neuroinflammation, when you're talking about encephalitis, allergic encephalitis, or autoimmune encephalitises, then basically the high intensity PEMFs go across the brain, reduce chronic inflammation through the brain. But at the same time, they're delivering circulation to the brain. They're increasing ATP production in the brain. They're increasing stem cell production in the brain. All the different actions of PEMFs that are in that Power Tools for Health book, all of that's happening at the same time.
so. I think we might get granular and then come back. But my next thing is when my brain goes to, okay, there's a lot of machines, PEMF machines that you just sit there and it's not delivering to any specific organ, or you stand on it and it's not specific organ or tissue or whatever else. Does that do anybody any good, or is that all bogus?
Yes, it is, because it goes back to, let's say, just use that example of the inflammation and the adenosine receptor. If you have a big magnet that a person's laying on, that's all going up, radiating up into the body. It's all going up into the body, but you're subject still to the inverse square law. So when you're laying on your back on a piece of equipment, that's whole body. It's going to drop off tremendously by the time it reaches the other side of your body. So if you're laying on your back, what's coming out the front of your chest is going to be extraordinarily small.
Okay.
If you want to treat, say, from the back, you want to treat the breasts, then you're going to have to calculate the dose of intensity you need at the breast. Fortunately, magnetic field therapy is ignored by healthy cells.
Okay.
So it's really only cells that are compromised that need the energy, take that energy, make it, and use it. Healthy cells say, "Oh, that was a nice little tickle,"
and they don't, and that's it.
Because of what? Because of homeostasis.
Okay, tell me, what is homeostasis?
All right. So homeostasis means that if I push you, if I give you a little push, right? What does your body do? It tries to bring you back to where you were before the push.
Sure.
And biochemical processes in the body, energy processes in the body are all that way. The body automatically tries to compensate. So if I give added energy into the brain tries to compensate by changing the oscillations of the brain waves in the brain to dampen it. So it says, I like it, but I want to go back to neutral. In the meantime, you've given the brain a chance to do something that it was stuck not being able to do. So you can have homeostasis, or basically homeostasis for normal conditions, but you can have homeostasis in abnormal conditions.
Okay. That makes sense.
Right? So if you got chronic inflammation, the body's going to find the best ability to function in the presence of that inflammation or in the presence of that compromise or disability. It's going to find the best balance it can. And so magnetic field therapy pushes that balance back towards normality. Because the cell says, I would rather be doing this, but I don't have the energy to do it. So a good example of this is non-union fractures.
Wow.
Okay, so one of the first applications that the FDA approved for PEMF therapy is for fractures that won't heal. So 6 months after a fracture happens, if it hasn't healed, it's called a non-union. Right? And you can have delayed unions as well. But if we have a non-union, and what has been found is that magnetic field therapy at the right intensities stimulates the process of healing, even in a fracture that's been stuck for 7 years.
Wow. Okay.
Automatically starts to produce energy, and the body takes that energy and starts the healing process all over again. Are you tired of living with chronic pain? Medication only masks the symptoms, but real healing starts at the cellular level. I'm Dr. William Pawluk, the leading expert on PEMF therapy. Pulsed electromagnetic field therapy is a science-backed, drug-free solution that helps reduce pain, speed up recovery, and improve overall health, right from the comfort of your home. Take advantage of an exclusive 10% discount on drpawluk.com PEMF systems. Visit drpawluk.com, that's drpawluk.com, to register
and claim your savings. This limited time offer is available only to registered listeners. Don't miss your chance to experience the benefits. Terms and conditions do apply. Don't just manage pain, transform your health. Visit drpawluk.com today and let's get started on your healing journey together.
Is there anybody that, well, still too many questions in my brain, but let's start with what else is there in terms of it besides inflammation? Does it do anything else, or is it really focusing on?
No. As I mentioned, it's circulation.
Yeah.
Stem cell stimulation, DNA initiation, inflammation reduction, edema, basically reduction of edema and swelling. So edema is one of the first points of damage to a cell is edema.
Mm-hmm.
And then DNA and porosity of cell membranes and so on. All of that happens kind of like at the same time.
And sleep too, it helps with, right?
Well, then there's another component of that, which is then the oscillations of the brain. So you could basically do brain tuning. So RTMS does some brain tuning to some extent, but that's not its primary action. So brain tuning is an important part of what we do. And of course, I discovered, go back to the origins, it does acupuncture.
Okay.
Right. And I didn't know why back then, but now we have much better science that says that the acupuncture system is a DC current system.
Mm.
It's a meridian system. The current is flowing through that system continuously at a very low level. And it has the acupuncture points, which are basically capacitors. They bump up the energy at that point and drive it down to the next acupuncture point. They do the same thing to the next one and so on. So that whole system is constantly keeping itself up in terms of the amount of energy. And because it's electrical current, Maxwell's equations, again, science, physics, says that magnetic fields interact with those and then keep the energy flowing even better. So every time you're doing a magnetic therapy session, you're stimulating the acupuncture system as well.
That makes sense because as we talked about, I studied some acupuncture also, and one of my teachers was a big, speaking of scars, she did a lot of scar work, and it makes sense that if it's a DC system, and if there's a scar in that system,
you're going to block the flow.
Right. And
Absolutely.
She did a lot of things to loosen up the scars so that the flow can continue. So it makes complete sense to me.
Well, let's go back to the scar for a second, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
So when you have a cut, the body has to repair it. And one of the ways the body repairs, so energy is needed to repair it. Molecules are needed, food is needed, nutrients are needed, energy is needed, electrical energy is needed. And so if the body does that and it does it properly, you get a nice, neat little scar. But it's left to chance.
Right.
You're leaving it to the chance of whatever the body has in terms of resources and capacity to heal. Depth of scar, whether it's dirty or not, contaminated or not, all these different factors go into it. But magnetic field therapy then gives the body an extra push. So a normal scar will heal in half the time. A wound will heal in half the time with magnetic stimulation.
That's cool.
Okay, as opposed to leaving it to the chance of the body doing the healing. So you could take hypertrophic scars and reduce them. You could take keloids and reduce them.
I was going to say it works on keloids.
Absolutely.
So keloids are just ugly scars, I guess.
Well, it's hypertrophic, so it's hyper-reactive.
Right.
It's overreacted. And so that's also sort of an energy process that's gotten stuck in overdrive.
So how many treatments for how long would it take to reduce a keloid or just a bad scar?
Well, what would you say as a doctor if somebody told you, I have a solution for you? What would you say?
Well, first of all, there is no solution. So let's
okay, I'm offering a solution. So the answer is it depends.
Well, that's always the case, yes.
That's always the case, right? So I say, I have a tool. Here's the energy that it's going to deliver, and I'm going to deliver it right. You're going to use it the right amount of time for the right intensities and in the right location. So then it's going to, whatever energy the cell needs to be able to repair itself, it's going to take the health. So I've got a 20-year-old with a keloid. It's going to be a lot different than an 80-year-old with a keloid.
Is there a range? Is it like 1 to 10 sessions? Is it 10 to 100 sessions? What's kind of the...
Also, it depends on the nutritional levels of that person. So I know a plastic surgeon in Virginia Beach who will not do plastic surgery on somebody until they've been on a nutritional program for 3 months.
That's smart. That makes sense.
Right? Because the cells are already primed. cells are already set up. They've got the nutrients they need. So now you're going to push that cell. You're going to make that cell work harder. It's got to have the tools and the resources to be able to do the work.
So this is not magic. That's what you're saying.
No.
You still need to eat well. You need to still exercise. You still need to do all your...
You have to do all the other things. Absolutely. Magnetic fields are simply stimulating the body to do better. But the body has to have the ability to do that.
Is there any person that it wouldn't be good for? Besides maybe...
It's biology, first of all, right? So it doesn't matter what the biology is. Now, the only true contraindication to PEMF therapy is people talk about implanted electronics, people talk about metals in the body,
Yep.
like MRI kinds of concerns. But I think, and nowadays, most of the implanted electronics are MR conditional. In other words, you can do an MRI.
Mm-hmm.
We don't worry about that so much anymore, but you have to find out if it's MR conditional. If it is,
right.
Fine. Metal doesn't matter that much, but metal is implanted in the body, and any metal that's implanted in the body is a foreign object. It's a foreign body.
Sure.
Does the body like foreign bodies?
Not at all.
Not at all. So joint replacements have a lifespan. They have to be replaced after a period of time or revised, right? Because
Sure.
they fail. And one of the reasons they fail is because the body's reacting with that stem, right? Because it's metal. It's
right.
a foreign object. And so you get osteolysis, you get bone breakdown. And that can happen faster or slower, depending on, again, the general health of the person. So it can vary significantly. But the only true indication that I have found so far, and I don't have any science to dispute it, is transplants.
So,
and why?
Yeah, tell me why. That's interesting.
Immune suppression.
Okay.
You don't want to stimulate the immune system. You don't want to cause a negative reaction with the medications that are being used for the immune suppression. And immune suppression then causes unpredictable reactions, and then you could end up with a failure, an organ failure.
Now, is this something you've actually experienced, or it's just a theoretical risk?
It's theoretical.
Okay.
As a physician, I understand how magnetics works. I understand how transplant works. And I said, well, at this point, I just don't want to take that chance. Even a corneal transplant.
Has there been anecdotal evidence about like cancer and things like that PEMFs are useful for? I
Yes,
know there may not be full studies.
No, there's actually a fair bit of research.
Okay.
Not as much as you'd like, but there's a fair bit. So in the Power Tools for Health book, I have a section on cancer. There's basic biological information. There are clinical studies, and a lot of those come from Eastern Europe.
Mm-hmm.
But I recommend PEMF therapy for cancer on a routine basis.
Okay.
What we find very often is that people with cancer who are doing magnetic field therapy appropriately with the appropriate equipment, and we can talk about appropriate equipment in a second.
Yeah, that's definitely.
Right. So if you got the appropriate equipment, then you can suppress the cancer production, the growth of the cancer. What you're doing is you're stimulating the immune system. You're creating a different environment for the cancer to be growing in. And when you're doing that, then the body has a better fighting chance. And we've found that when people stop their magnetic field therapy, they've been doing it for their cancer, and they stop it, the cancer grows.
Interesting.
Because you've taken the brakes off.
Yeah.
Okay, the magnetic therapy was, in some sense, providing brakes on the cancer process.
Yeah, I think I have a patient with a glioblastoma that I forgot the name, but I'm sure you know it, of the machine that
PTF, Tumor Treating Fields. It's Neotune or Novacure. I think it's Novacure. That's what
I think that's what it is. Yeah. Yep. So let's go into machines since we started machines. What would people want to look at? What are good machines? What are not good machines? How do we know? You're only one person. A lot of people are going to be watching this. We're going to send a lot of people your way. But how do we know? Or is it really just look at your website and see what is approved? Talk to what do we need to look for?
Okay, so first of all, you have to start off with the most important principle. Intensity matters.
Okay.
Faraday's law. The higher the magnetic field, the pulse of the magnetic field, and the faster it reaches its peak, the more energy is produced in the body.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter how fast, how many times you do that, right? Frequency is much less important than intensity.
Okay.
So if you're looking at a piece of PEMF equipment, and a salesperson is selling you something, ask them what the peak intensity is of that system. Remember, we talked about the peak intensity needed, the optimal magnetic intensity needed for inflammation is 15 Gauss.
Right. But you have to get through the tissues.
But then that's just going to work at the superficial level, right? Then you need to calculate the dose for the depth that you want to go to, ideally throughout the whole body. So if it's less than 15 Gauss, you're wasting your money.
Okay.
And there are a lot of companies that are selling the whole body magnetic systems that are 1 Gauss or less.
Wow.
So what do? People say, well, they feel better with it. Sure, but they're superficial. So they're acting on the acupuncture points and meridians. They're improving circulation superficially. There may be some secondary benefits beyond that to the rest of the body, but essentially, it's essentially an acupuncture effect. But it's not going to do the physiologic things that we want.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about it from a physiologic perspective, it's all the different actions of a magnetic field. It's not you use this magnet for this problem, you use that magnet for that problem. It doesn't work that way. All we're doing is giving the body the ability to heal itself. And it's going to be smarter than me or you or anybody who says this is going to work for everything.
All right. So I have to know, what's the upper limit of why wouldn't everybody just buy the most powerful machine they can afford?
That's the key.
Okay, so let's talk about afford, because
intensity is cost. The higher the intensity, the higher the cost.
I see.
The primary limiting factor for most people is going to be cost. And so people come to me and they talk to me about a particular system they're looking at. I said, for your problem, cancer, or for kidney disease or liver disease, or again, brain fog or brain problems, Alzheimer's. Well, that's not going to do very much because it's not going to go into the brain except maybe this much. So like TENS, for example, and microcurrent is all very superficial. It's acting through the nervous system and then relying on the nervous system to produce some systemic effects from it.
Yep.
And it does that. It works, but it's not at the tissue level. And my goals primarily are to work at the tissue level, to heal, to cause healing. So I can help you with your pain, and magnetic fields have a natural pain-killing effect, like codeine or ibuprofen or Tylenol. Mm-hmm. But I don't want just that. I want to heal the cause.
Okay.
If you don't heal the cause, the pain just comes back, and then you're going to be dependent for the rest of your life on that particular molecule, right, to help you with your pain. So that's the benefit of PEMF therapy. It can do what Tylenol does or ibuprofen does, but at the same time, it's also doing all the healing stuff. And that means you need to have the right magnetic field.
Your body was designed to heal, but illness, chronic disease, stress, injury, and time can slow that process down. What if you could restore your body's natural ability to recover, recharge, and feel its best? The key to healing is giving your body the energy to repair itself. PEMF therapy does exactly that, recharging your cells, improving circulation, reducing inflammation, and helping you function at your best. For decades, I've studied this technology, worked with hundreds of medical professionals, and helped thousands of people reduce pain, regain energy, and take control of their health. However, not all PEMF devices are created equal. No one size fits all. We offer personalized consultations so you can find the right device for your needs, backed by real science and trusted results. If you're ready for a real solution, let's talk. Schedule a consultation at drpawluk.com. That's drpawluk.com, because real healing starts at the cellular level.
So what is you said 15 Gauss is really still, even 15 Gauss is still superficial. What should people be looking for? And let's just say, like you said, joint pain, let's say elbow, knees, wrists, let's make it specific. What should people be looking for?
Okay, let's talk about that, because I want to dispel one other concept that we're stuck with. The particular solution for a particular problem. So every problem has its own specific solution.
Okay. But you just told me magnets.
I say we got to get rid of that idea.
Right.
So when I'm doing stimulation for your joints, for your arthritis, do I just want to do that? No. I want to treat your whole body. right? I want to help you in general.
Yeah.
So you're getting a device that can help you with that local problem, but really, if you're going to spend $5,000 for a machine to treat your local problem, you also want the same machine to be able to work for you for health maintenance and general health maintenance, again, over longer period, for the rest of your life, essentially, for the life of that machine. So I have on the in the Supercharge Your Health book, there's an appendix about the adenosine receptor. And on drpawluk.com, there's a blog about adenosine, inflammation, and pain. And that blog has tables that shows you the magnetic field you need to start with to deliver the energy at the depth that you need.
Okay, that's
right?
awesome.
So today, you got a problem with arthritis in your hands. You don't need a strong magnetic field to deal with that. It's got to be at least 15 Gauss, probably closer to 200 or so.
Okay.
All right, but then tomorrow or next week, you develop a disc problem, or you fall, you break a bone, or you have osteoporosis that you're trying to prevent from fracturing. So now you have to sort of think about, what do I want for the rest of my life?
Right. Especially if you're talking about those numbers. If it gets...
So then ideally you need a stronger machine. So drpawluk.com offers consultations. Awesome. I have a medical team, and if you go on drpawluk.com, there's a tab on the right side, consultation, request a consultation. You fill out a form and you send it in, and then we assess your need, and you can get a free consultation. But I'm going to have a caveat. If you only want to spend $50 on a machine, don't bother.
Right.
Get a catalog. Or you can look on our website, and we've got a product comparison guide, and you can buy cheaper machines. But you buy cheap, get cheap.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's always the case in terms of we can't just buy from the Russians. Come on.
Yeah. Well, we do buy some from the Russians. We buy them from the Germans and the Israelis and the South Africans, and we buy wherever the machine makes sense.
That makes sense. So on the stuff that you carry, do you have a way to actually measure that what they say is true is actually coming true? Yes.
That gets complicated because of the physics and the engineering aspect of that, yes. But I've verified the intensities of most of our equipment. The problem is that when you get to the very high-end equipment that produces Faraday's law, gets the highest intensity at the fastest rate,
yep.
It's very difficult to actually measure those peaks.
Okay.
Because the equipment has to be extremely expensive to do that measurement. And most manufacturers design the equipment to measure their fields specifically for their equipment.
Okay.
So most of the time, a lot of people are doing formulas and estimates. For a lot of devices, I've been able to measure those fields.
Okay.
And say,
how,
yes.
How high do they get? Like, do they get, you said 200 for wrist, but how high can you purchase something? Just curiosity,
right,
kill the cat.
There are devices I have that range from 15 Gauss, 10 Gauss, up to 10,000.
10,000. Okay. And you said the MRI was what again?
Pardon me?
And the MRI was what?
It varies depending on the MRI. So an open MRI is typically around 1,000 to 2,000.
Okay. So this is very powerful stuff.
So it can be quite powerful and create muscle contractions.
Okay.
So it can be strong enough to initiate or stimulate motor points in muscles that causes the muscle to contract.
And is that in any way harmful potentially?
No, not really, except for a concept with magnetic field therapy that's very important is magnetic fields don't tend to cause problems. They reveal problems. So when you stimulate the muscle to contract, if it's a healthy muscle, it's just going to contract, no big deal.
Right.
But if you have tendonitis around that muscle, right, then that tendonitis is going to be aggravated. So if you have an aggravation with the magnetic field, there's a problem there. I'll tell you an example. I had a very buff guy who was doing a lot of physical workouts and so on. Very smart. And he started using a very low intensity portable magnetic device, only about 200 Gauss. And his knee started hurting when he did the therapy. And he said, this is a piece of crap. It's causing me pain. He's a very impatient guy. So he basically threw it aside, did a bunch of other stuff, and then came back and did it again. Same thing happened. And I said, he needs to go see an orthopedist. There's something wrong with that knee. Turns out he had a septic knee.
Ooh.
So the magnetic field therapy discovered a problem that he wasn't aware existed. And because he had an earlier intervention, it saved his knee.
That's pretty impressive. That is pretty impressive. Hopefully there's not that many people out there with a septic knee.
No, but we do have, hopefully not. We do have protocols that are in the Supercharge Health book as well about going low and slow. So when you're getting treatment in a practice, when you're getting treatment in a professional setting, we go back to how many treatments do you need? In a professional setting, because you're paying by the minute, right? They're going to crank it up because they need to know that it's working for you. You want to know that it's working for you. These very low intensity systems, you can barely tell that it's working. So you almost don't feel anything. So people like to feel that it's working in order to have a sense that, yeah, this is valuable and it's worth me paying my time, paying my money and my time.
Right.
The study on bone healing shows us that the magnetic field intensity that you need and the treatment time that you need depends on the problem, depends on the magnetic field, and so on. So for non-union fractures, they surveyed people who got these machines. They were very low intensity. They were only 18 Gauss. But you're treating a wrist fracture that won't heal or a fibula that won't heal. Those are relatively superficial, so that intensity may be good enough. But the company said that you got to be treating 9 hours a day.
Oh.
All right. So then they went back and surveyed all the people who got these machines, who were prescribed the equipment, and then they asked them how many hours a day they were treating for, and then they found out when they healed. When was the fracture determined to have been healed? The people who did 9 hours a day healed in 3 months. Even though that non-union had been there a lot longer, but on average they healed in 3 months. People who did 3 hours a day or less took 6 months to heal.
Okay, makes sense.
Right. So it's based on the problem, and then you have to have the right piece of equipment. So if they had used higher intensity machines for those fractures, they probably would have healed faster with less treatment time.
Very cool. So it feels like we're approaching on our time, and I still have a lot of questions, but is there anything that any major concepts or thoughts that we've missed that we haven't talked about?
The time and the intensity. So yeah, going to get treatment somewhere else is often a good place to start. That way you can find out what you need.
Yeah. And
you see that it's working, it's actually doing something for you. And then you have to think about investing in one yourself.
Is there a lot of practices that have their own PEMFs?
There are a lot now around the country. There are horse people who are doing PEMFs in horses who are now doing them in humans. They're not trained for human therapy, but they are anyway. Fortunately, it's very safe.
Yeah.
The key thing really is intensity matters in getting the right piece of equipment and using it in the right way. Because if you don't use it the right way, it's not going to help you that much, and you're going to get frustrated because it's not working fast. I think expectations is very, very, very important. This equipment is a form of physical therapy. Okay, it's not a magic bullet. It's not angels and so on.
Come on, we want some angels.
Fairy dust.
Lightning striking.
Well, you can have all the fairy dust you want. I think that's a good thing for your healing process.
Right.
If you're a skeptic going into your healing, then it may not be healing quite as well as if you really believe that it's working for you. So combining your belief and the magnetic therapy will do results much better, faster. But be realistic. The body has to heal itself. Magnetic therapy is not healing the body. It's providing the body the opportunity to heal itself. So you have to respect the time that's going to take for a body to heal, whatever.
I think that's such an important message, because there's so many things out there, and all of them work for some people and not others. But I think the majority of the time we don't give enough people time to, the therapies, enough time to actually work and see, and to really, patience is not a virtue in this culture.
Patience is not a virtue. And also, I think magnetic field therapy can be combined with most other therapies. And 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2.
Yeah.
PEMF therapy added to whatever else you're doing is going to be a factor. It's going to be 1 + 1 = 10 times or 100 times more.
Yeah.
But if you can only afford one piece of equipment, I found over the years, having tested and used all this other types of equipment and modalities and treatments, I find that PEMF therapy is the best value, because it's doing so many different things. and you can do it at home alone. You got control over it. You don't have to go somewhere to get the treatment, but you got to get the right piece of equipment. And that's why the consultation may become important.
Yeah. Tell us again where people can find you, because I think this is so valuable.
All right. drpawluk.com. That's drpawluk.com, drpawluk.com. And the two books are tremendous resources if you want to sort of, my website, drpawluk.com, is just loaded with information. In fact, it's too much for a lot of people. So it's a good thing and a bad thing.
Do you need a website cleaned up? Is that what you're saying?
No, the information is important because everybody's finding something else. Everybody's got some other reasons to have been there.
Yeah.
They find different value. But the books then become important. If you want more of the science, less practicality, but more of the science, there's some practical in there, but not as much. And that's the Supercharge Your Health book. That's the practical book.
Okay.
You want the science, it's the Power Tools for Health book. There's over 500 references.
Amazing.
So the combination of the two actually is very useful.
This is amazing, truly. I'm inspired, and like literally thinking how we can use this in our practice. So I know we're getting together in a couple of weeks, so we'll talk then. It's been a pleasure, truly. It's been inspirational to talk to you. I think this could help a lot of people. And thank you again for this episode of Environmental Toxicants, Autoimmunity, and Chronic Disease Summit. And it's been a pleasure. Yes, please.
May I take us back to the topic?
Yes.
And then so we have to splice and insert earlier. So how do PEMFs help with toxicity and detoxing and so on? So we talked about opening the cell membrane. But the most important aspect of PEMF therapy in toxicity, whatever the source, whatever the kind, is the healing aspect. You still have to get rid of the toxicants. You still have to get rid of the metals. You still have to get rid of the insecticides and pesticides. So you still have to do chelation and all the other things that do that. But then you have to heal the tissue. So getting rid of it is not necessarily solving the problem.
So PEMFs doesn't help get rid of all the different toxicants.
To some extent it does, but if you've got mercury locked into your brain cells,
sure,
you have to get it out of those brain cells, then you have to get it out of the brain, and then you have to get it out of the body. So you still need that process of getting rid of all that stuff. Now, magnetic fields may facilitate it by decreasing inflammation, by decreasing the locking in of behind the blood-brain barrier and so on. So it could help with removing the detox, get it faster. Also, in terms of detox, it's stimulating the liver. So if you're just treating the brain, you're not going to get as far as if you're treating the brain and the liver.
That makes sense.
The liver is going to metabolize better, faster, right? It's going to have more energy to do the metabolic work it has to do. Then you're going to help to detox the liver as well. Same thing with the kidneys. If you're stimulating the kidneys, you can increase blood flow in the kidneys. You're going to filter better. And obviously, the third pathway or fourth pathway of detoxification is the skin. So with sweating. So PEMF therapy can be combined with sauna. PEMF therapy doesn't cause you to sweat.
So how does that work in terms of how do you combine it with sauna?
You don't do it while you're in the sauna. But what you can do is you can actually do it after your sauna, because once you start releasing the sauna with the heat and the sweating, then you could accelerate that sweating process that's already started by the sauna.
Interesting. I'm getting all sorts of cool ideas. All right. I like this. What else? Anything else?
That's it. Sorry. Yes.
No, it's amazing. Again, thank you again. And thank you for this episode of the Environmental Toxicants, Autoimmunity, and Chronic Disease. We've been privileged to be with Dr. William Pawluk, and my name is Dr. Ed Levitan. Thank you again.
Thanks for joining me on the PEMF Effect. I hope today's conversation gave you new tools, insights, and inspiration to take control of your health. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could benefit from PEMF therapy and holistic healing. Your body has the power to repair, recover, and thrive. Sometimes it just needs the right charge. Until next time, stay curious, stay proactive, and keep powering up to better health.